the main piece of all of this, the image that you see in the description for this program, and I also know this individual and have had at least 10 conversations about racism, white supremacy with this person, probably more, and all of these people that I'm talking about, the previous two black individuals and the non-white female that you see pictured in the description for this program, they have all heard the cows. Every last one of them. They have all heard the cows. The Asian female, non-white female. That is the front page of the University of Washington's school paper. That was the front page of the paper for Friday, February 5th. Anyone, if you would like to scrutinize this image more closely, click on the link. It's in the description for this program. You can see the entire paper. Actually, you don't get the entire paper. You're missing a key chunk, but I'll clean that up immediately. There's a key insert that you don't have. I will include that as well. But you'll be able to at least see most of the paper, right? You'll be able to see the front page for sure, and you can give this front page a real good look over. This is what Yellow Manny burst on the scene to show me on Friday. Yellow Manny knows this person. I know this person. Actually, I can just go ahead and say her name, Christine, because it's on the front page of the paper. You can read it for yourself. We know this person well and have had a plethora of conversations with this individual about racism, white supremacy, and specifically about why it is incorrect and horrific for non-white people to engage in sexual intercourse with white people under the system of white supremacy. He shows me the paper. I didn't know what it was about, so I started reading. I'll read along with you guys. New RainyDawg radio program serves as open forum for sex and health issues. So I started looking at this, and I'm caught for a myriad of reasons. A myriad of reasons. Number one, the cows, context of white supremacy. When it began, this radio program was on RainyDawg Radio, which is the University of Washington's radio station. I don't know how many people heard the cows from 2007, but that's when this show started. October of 2007 on RainyDawg Radio. If you see some inconsistencies in Tim Wise in the program description saying that he's been here twice, but from time to time, myself or someone else saying he's been here 3 times, it's because Tim Wise was on the cows when we were on RainyDawg Radio. Same for Farrell Winfrey. If you see some discrepancies between how many times she's been here, it's because she too was on RainyDawg Radio, the cows, when we were there in 2007. We were booted from RainyDawg Radio, myself and Back of the Bus. The program was kicked off the air by white people, suspected racists. If you read this article, you will see Jason Baxter, white man, suspected white supremacist. He worked with RainyDawg Radio when our program was on that station and was not helpful at all in getting our program back on the air. In fact, I have letters that he wrote to people describing multiple infractions that we had committed in not filling out paperwork in an appropriate manner, although they did not alert us to this until 2 months after the fact. The fact that we used a racial slur on the air. What we did was read from a scholarly journal that is in the University of Washington's library, where a white man, William Broyle, who did the screenplay for Planet of the Apes, the newest version, the version with Marky Mark in it, Mark Wahlberg, where he apparently is a Vietnam veteran, and he was describing his combat experience, and with euphoria, talking about the fun that he had in killing and maiming hooches and gooks. Exact quote. That's exactly what he said. Hooches and gooks. That's what he said in the article, and that's what we read on the program. And we were reprimanded and ultimately had the show thrown off the air for the racial slur hooches and gooks, which we were pointing out to illustrate racism, white supremacy. At any rate, this program that's on the front page of the paper with Christine, non-white female, Asian female, their program is titled Genital Discourse. Genital Discourse. She is co-hosting. She's not doing this program by herself. She is co-hosting this program with a male that I suspect is a white racist, white supremacist. I could be incorrect about that. I have not been able to ask him if he's a white person. I suspect this individual is white. Strongly suspect this individual is white. I could be incorrect. But I highly doubt it. I am fairly certain this is a white person, and I strongly suspect a racist white supremacist. At any rate, so Yellow Manny shows me this image, and I'm reading and seeing, okay, so this is a sex talk radio program with an Asian female and a suspected racist. Okay. What in the world? What in the world? And this is very important. This program airs at Friday, every Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Okay? Now, if you read the article, they're pitching this as though, with exactly what it says, an open forum for sex and health issues. Christine, she's pre-med, okay? She is not ignorant. This is a very bright student, takes her academics very serious. I believe she's graduating within a few months, looking to go to med school. Not, someone who's just goofing off, going to frat parties and what have you. Very serious scholar. So they're presenting this as though, this is serious dialogue. We need to have conversations around these issues. It's important. You can use word, and I think anyone who's listening to the program, the cows, if you listen to this program, white people are very skilled in the use of words. You can use words to make people think a lot of things. They can use words to present this as though this is a mature and much-needed dialogue around sex, health issues, drugs, alcohol. Very important. University environment, we got a lot of young students. This is important, and we're having serious dialogue. We got a pre-med student here, so we can give out helpful information. You could spin it that way, but for me, logic kicks in. You have a program titled Genital Discourse that airs at Friday at 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. I did not just come out of the cotton field. You are not going to tell me that a group of students, mostly between the ages of 18 and 23, are going to be interested in scholarly dialogue on sex and health issues at 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on a Friday. I went to college. I have been on the campus of the University of Washington at Friday at 10 p.m. I have seen a lot of debauchery, drinking, drugs. People do not look like they are ready for a scholarly dialogue about anything. They look like they are about to engage in acts of sexual intercourse and other hedonistic behaviors. That's what I see, and that's what I would expect from this program, okay, which I will admit I haven't heard. I didn't even know about the program until yesterday. So we go back to the image, because that's what started all of this, looking at this image. So I go back and I look at the picture, and I'm like, this is incredible. You've got the microphone. I hope everybody, if you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, look at the photo. You're seeing, like I said, you're seeing a much smaller version of what I saw. Click on the link so you can see a larger version. Look at that photo for a second. I'm gonna pause so you can take a good look and examine for yourself. Dr. Wells coming on the show tomorrow. Keep that in mind. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, author of the ISIS Papers. Images, symbolism all over the ISIS Papers. I think she would give me a pat on the back for picking all this out. But look at the image. I'll hush for a moment. Just look. Okay. If you're not listening at Blog Talk Radio, I'm so sorry. Come to Blog Talk Radio, specifically come to blogtalkradio.com/victim-of-racism. Come to my site and look for this program. You can look by month, so just come to February and look for this program so you can get a look at this image. Okay. I look at this image and I say, wow, they've got a huge phallic symbol right at this Asian female's mouth. Christine, again, I know this female, with sex in huge capital letters, all capital letters, and in red next to the photo. Whoa. And I show this to Yellow Manny. In fact, we were having a long dialogue. The whole time we were having this dialogue, I just held this front page of the paper up over my mouth. I had nothing else to say. I felt this image was so strong. The story, the image, everything about this was so strong. That was all that needed to be said. Yellow Manny looks at this image. He begins to look at it a little closer. And he says, you know what? The expression on her face, and I hope this is late. Justice isn't here. This is late show, so I can just be honest. I'm gonna try to keep it clean and as PG as possible. But he says, this image looks like a female who is about to engage in oral sex for the first time, and she looks very apprehensive about doing it. Look at the photo. Just look at the photo. As you look at the photo, another thing I want you to keep in mind, this is not the back page of the student paper at the University of Washington. This is the front page at the University of Washington. Not only is this the front page at the University of Washington, I want you to look. Do you see where the daily is looking at the photo? You see where the daily is written right below the photo? They have moved the title of the newspaper about halfway down the page. Just think about that for a moment. We're all about logic. I could be talking crazy. It's related, so you don't know. Gus could be just talking crazy and wanting time to ramble and talk to you about foolishness. That could be true. So I want you to think for yourself if what I'm saying makes sense. You can look at the exact same thing I looked at and see if it makes sense. They moved the title of the paper to the middle of the page. I just want you to take a second and think how many times you have seen the title of the newspaper get moved to the middle of the page. Just take a moment and think about that. Okay. So we got the title moved to the middle of the page. We've got sex in huge red letters. We got a color photograph on the front page. That in and of itself. This is a student newspaper. Not all of the photographs are color. It's not like they're balling out of control. This is not the New York Times, the LA Times. This is just the daily at the University of Washington. But we got a color photo here, so you get this bright, vivid image, okay? Okay, and name of the program, their program, Genital Discourse, okay? We'll keep all that in mind. I'm not done yet. I'm loading up on this one because there was a lot in this paper. I'm going to load up and hammer this home because I don't even think you can argue with what I'm saying by the time I finish. There's a lot more to add on. I'm just stopping for a second to go to the phone lines because a lot of other people have called in, so I'll take calls to see if there are questions If you have a question and you already called in, you can press 1. That'll put your hand up. If you do not and you just want to listen, that's fine too. I see a 111 with a hand. 111 that pressed 1. You are on. Do you have a question or comment?
This I look. Before you enlighten some people about the imagery on the cover of the paper. The first thing that came to mind even before you said that was, I don't know, for those of you who may not be listeners or partake in rap or hip-hop music, what's very funny is that there's a euphemistic term used for a woman committing fellatio called rocking the mic. And so I was wondering if that was what they were going for, like a euphemistic way of showing a non-white female trying to get her to approach committing an act of fellatio in the context in the way where people would, younger people would, because I'm pretty sure, at the school, younger people, and they probably know what that term means. I wonder if that's what the aim and intention was.
I feel, I know we have a lot of discussions on the program where people say, you're making it seem as though this is conscious. You're making it seem as though this is conscious. That ends up popping up. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to put everybody's mic on. If you're called in, just press the mute button. Make sure I don't have a repeat of what happened earlier. Okay, everybody's mic is on. They called in. Just press the mute button so you don't disrupt the broadcast. Now, if you want to talk, your mic is already on. The program should have had more time on it, but I just want to make sure I don't get cut off and nobody else gets cut off either. Okay, but yeah, with regards to your comment, I feel this was very conscious. The people that put this together, the way the program looks, I feel it was very conscious because there's more I have not shared that I'm going to get to. This is very conscious. Everything that I see about this in terms of them moving the title of the paper down to the middle of the page, the colors, sex being in bright red letters, the way the photo was cropped. If you click the link in the description for the program, if you click that link, you'll be able to see the whole, not the whole paper, I got to say that. You're not looking at the whole paper. There's an insert that you don't have that I'll make sure I include, but you'll be looking at most of the paper. You'll be able to see the full photograph. They cropped this picture a lot to make it give you the image that you have in front of you. This photo was cropped a lot. I mean, you could see a lot more of her body. You could see a lot more of the background. This photo was precision cropped to give you the presentation that's before you right now in the description for this program. So I feel this was very conscious. I'm real certain that a lot of people are familiar with the phrase that you shared, rocking the mic, and what that stands for. I don't think this was an accident. I don't think this was a coincidence. I think this was a conscious act. And in fact, Yellow Manny asked 2 white students. He took the paper to them. As I said, we know this person. We know this. This is not a stranger. I've known this person for more than a year. He took the paper to 2 white people, and he said, what do you think of this image? Just tell me, the first word that pops to mind. What do you think? And the first white person, he didn't want to say anything. Yellow Manny pressed him, and the first word he said was confusion. That was the first white person. Second white person, he said, what do you think of this image? Second white person said, tongue-tied. I want to further add this, just paying attention to detail. We used to broadcast, Back of the Bus and myself, we used to broadcast from this very same studio. If this was live and they were doing the show at the time this photograph was taken, which I don't think it could have been, but whatever, maybe it was, you got to have headphones on to be able to be on the air. The way the studio is set up, you aren't going to be able to hear yourself or anybody else that's talking on the show unless you have your headphones on once you go live, because you'll have background distortion if the audio is just playing in the studio and your mic is on. So because she's not wearing headphones in this photo, I don't even think this photo was taken while they were doing a live broadcast. I don't know what they were doing, why she was at the mic. I mean, I don't know anything about it other than I think this was a consciously set up image to convey this Asian female in a sexual manner, particularly an Asian female at a predominantly white institution where sexual intercourse between white males and Asian females is rampant. I was speaking with Yellow Manny, incoming freshman, Asian females. You got a lot of Asian females on this campus. Incoming freshmen, Asian females, victims of racism, white supremacy. I don't know how often you see an Asian female on the front of the paper at the University of Washington. I don't even know how often you see an Asian person, period, on the front of the paper at the University of Washington, much less color photograph that has displaced the title of the newspaper. You might not ever see anything like this. Ever, ever, ever. And what it's attached to, sexual intercourse. Phallic symbol, right at her lips, phallic symbol, bold face print, red type, sex, right next to the photograph, and inside, pornography reviews, sexual positions, condoms. In my view, this is the Asian geisha, the hyper-sexualized Asian female all over it, and worse, it is, in my view, conditioning white people to perceive Asian females as, yes, that's what they are. That's what they're here for. The Asian geisha, the Asian whore, that's what they're here for. My sexual fantasies, I can run wild. They're even on the University of Washington radio station on a program called Genital Discourse, talking about sex. My gosh, that's what they're here for. Asian females, I think, would be conditioned in the exact same way. There's nothing wrong with this. She's pre-med. This is great. This is fun. We're just having a good time. We're in school, and we're certainly confused about racism, white supremacy. Again, I cannot underscore, I know this female. This is not a stranger. This is someone, I have eaten with this female repeatedly. We've talked about racism, white supremacy repeatedly. We've gone out to restaurants repeatedly. This is not a stranger. And I'm not super tight with this person, but I know this person well. Yellow Manny knows this person better than I do. He was furious about this. Furious about this. And I believe he saw everything I'm sharing with you now. As I said, he looked at it and said, this looks like an Asian female, this looks like a female who is preparing to engage in oral sex who's apprehensive about it. She's going to do it, but she's apprehensive about it. Maybe it's her first time. That's what he thought of the image. I could be incorrect. I don't think so. And as I said, the slam dunk, hang on the rim, the sex edition insert, I will make sure, because this is online. This is online. You can go to the University of Washington's webpage, click for the Daily, go to their website, and you can see exactly what I just read. You can look at all of this, come to your own conclusion. 5 second, the pornography review for the homosexual film. 2 white males on the cover. They are wrapped. One of them is wrapped in the American flag. The other one is wrapped in the flag for the UK. I thought that was interesting too, but that takes a backseat to everything else that I saw about this. It's just incredible. I'm stunned. I cannot believe that this went out. I don't know how she feels about this. I have her contact information. I'm going to contact her to let her know that I did do a program about this. I hope it has not sounded like I'm bashing her. I don't think she did anything incorrect. Number one, she's a victim of racism, white supremacy. First and foremost, a victim of racism, white supremacy. Number two, I don't think she knew about the photograph. I don't think she knew how it was going to be used. I'm real certain they didn't go to her and ask her which photograph she would like to be used, if they even told her that they were going to put her face on the front page of the paper. I don't know how she feels about it. She might have seen the exact same thing I did. I don't know. I am going to contact her to see if she would be interested in coming on the program to share her views about this. Maybe I'm incorrect. Maybe everything that I've shared with you all is false. Maybe it's not there. Maybe I'm looking for something. That could be true. I don't think so. Regardless, I will contact her and see if she's willing to come on the program to share her thoughts. That would be interesting. Again, I'm not saying she did anything wrong. She is not to blame. The white people who practice racism, white supremacy are most to blame for this. They are most to blame for the program existing in the first place, most to blame for the photograph looking the way that it does, for the paper looking the way that it does. The white people who practice racism, white supremacy are by far most responsible for this. Those are the people that I would have a problem with, not her. Not her. She did nothing incorrect. Cannot emphasize that enough. Victim of racism, white supremacy, and I suspect, just in my view, being horrifically victimized again. I could be incorrect. I don't know. I could be wrong. As I said, I've never seen anything like this at a university paper. Never. I mean, and the coincidence of this sex insert being placed in this paper, where this is what they've decided is going to be on the front page. This is the edition that we're going to put the pornography, advertisements for the sex toy store, all of that's going in this paper. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. And in fact, if you click on that link that's in the description, if you look at the entire front page, the picture that you're seeing is just half of the front page. If you look at the whole front page, the title of the newspaper is one of the largest fonts on the page. Okay, so the daily, that's one of the biggest things. The second biggest thing is the term sex. That's the second largest font on the page. The third largest font on the page is the word dirty. You can't see that. That's on the bottom chunk of the page, but those by far, I'm scanning the entire paper, those by far are the three biggest fonts on the front page of the paper. Sex, the daily, and dirty, in that order. Those are the biggest fonts on the front page, and sex is on the front page twice, in all caps, bold-face print, and in red print one of those times. That's the front page of the paper for Friday, February 5th. Everybody that called in, your mic is open. I don't know if my pal, I have another Asian female, she's informed about racism, white supremacy. If she's on the line, I would really be grateful to hear an Asian female's commentary on this photograph. I'm a black male. I could be wrong. I could just be going overboard to snatch anything that I think is racism, white supremacy. I would love to hear what an Asian female thought about this photograph. If you're on the line, I would love to hear it. If you don't want to share, that's fine, but I would appreciate this one if there is an Asian female on the line to hear their commentary about this.
Hi, Big Bud.
My pal, how are you doing?
Very good. Up very late.
I feel ya.
I was on the internet looking around, and I was trying to find who were the largest porn moguls. And I have found that it's mainly, if not all, white people. Men and white women. I've also browsed the section of Fry's porn, and if you look at the titles of of Asian-oriented porn selections. It's very, very white supremacist.
You said the titles? Is that what you said?
Titles of those DVDs.
Okay. Can you give us some examples without being too vulgar? Can you give us some examples?
I can't, not right off the top of my head, but they use the word Orient a lot. They do use geisha a lot too. Very interesting.
Wow. Did you get a chance to see the front page of the paper by chance?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Am I crazy? Am I, if you just look at this, are you just like, hey, this is a great photo, what are you talking about? This is just a great opportunity. She got all this exposure to pump up her program. Nothing is incorrect about this at all. Was that your thought about it?
I have a photography background, and that's an awful photograph. And that's a huge mic. And that's an awful picture of her.
What's awful about? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. What is awful about it is her mouth is obviously she's in mid-sentence. She hasn't finished her sentence, so it's like she wasn't asked if that picture had been taken when it was taken. That was a candid photograph. And they chose to choose that. I'm sure they have taken pictures of her throughout the whole show. I'm sure she was aware of that person there who's taking photographs of her. And I'm sure there's a lot more better pictures of her not in a weird half-sentence facial. And they chose that one. That's interesting to me, why they would choose that picture.
So with your photography background, is that a photo that you would have picked to put on the front page of a paper?
No.
With your photography background, do you think it's significant that the title of the newspaper was displaced by this photograph?
Yes. Because how you edit things, it's basically the first thing you see is supposed to be your title. And a title not necessarily has to be in words. It could be in pictures. That's the first thing that you wanted people to see. And also, if you look at the photograph itself, the only thing that is in focus is her and the mic. You don't see anything in the background. If it is, it's somewhat blurry, it's abstract, you can't really see what it is. You can't even tell if she's really in the studio. To me, what it looks like is just like a mic set up somewhere and she's like talking. But it's up above her, and the mic is very prominent. The whole mic is shown. They could have chose to cut out a little bit of the mic. It's not like anyone has never seen a mic before. And you brought up a really good point. If she was in the studio talking while doing her program, she should have headphones on. And to me, with headphones on, that would have made a more interesting photograph.
Wow. You are an alumnus at this university, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Right. Congratulations. Just this in conjunction, I guess, with what you observed your time at the university, Asian females, white males, how do you think this would impact the amount of, or just the contact amount of Asian females being in sexual relationships with white males?
I think it would be a really huge impact. Mainly because you have a female talking explicitly, really open about sex. Something very taboo that you don't like, I'm sure there's a lot of white women. Obviously, there's many white women on the air that's willing to speak about sex. But it's very interesting to have a very stereotypical conservative culture. Asian Americans are stereotypically conservative. That's what they're thought to be. And to have her come out in the open and speak extremely open about sex kind of gives this idea of it's kind of almost a very erotic thought about Asian women. It's like, oh, they think this way. There's already a stereotype behind Asian women being extremely erotic in the bed, right? And being conservative, like the freak in the sheets and the lady on the streets kind of stereotype.
Mm.
And now she's out and open, willing to speak about sex. Maybe all other Asian women are open about sex, and then that feeds into that whole porn business where Asian women are depicted in porn doing extremely sexually explicit things that you might not even see white women do. That you rarely I will say that, rarely see white women do. There's a lot more number of women or non-white women doing very obscure sexual things, not just intercourse, obscure sexual things that white women you can hardly find. A lot of fetish stuff. I'll clarify that.
And the younger Asian females, this female is not very old. I don't even think she's 21 at this point. And that I know is a big part of it, getting very young Asian girls to be sexually exploited as well. That's playing out in Haiti right now too, but I think that's a big part of it too. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I totally agree. And it's done in a very different way. How BET does it to black women, I'll go on a long, I'll just say a lot of the nightclub night scenes, even the promotion, like, posters, most of the times, not all the time, but most of the times you do see Asian women depicted half naked on these posters. And you can see they're not women, they're not a full figure of a woman. It's like misty, you can't really see their face, and they're dancing, and they're wearing very scantily clad clothes. And I feel like that's where it is promoted. And unfortunately, it is true, a lot of Asian cultures are conservative, not because conservative to American, quote-unquote, American culture, whatever that is. White culture. It's different, but it seems like I can go on forever, but I'll just make it really brief. For Asian American women, we are faced with a lot of taboos. Mainly because what American culture, or what white culture has put us in, this small little container, this small little box that we have to live in. And so when Asian women do it, it's like there's no turning back. And for Asian families, for Asian parents, it's kind of like it's this black and white story for them. I don't know who said it before, but about the grain of sand, they study it to use it against us, and the eye, and how it tracks things. If you look at the article, the phallic or the microphone directly comes out of the word sex. That's true, yeah. It directly comes out of it. So that's an arrow. That's basically, you see the word sex, and it follows the microphone to her face.
Wow. Yeah, I want to make sure. I definitely want to contact Christine. Her name's in the paper. I was telling Yellow Manny that I had some ambivalence about doing this because I told him immediately I was going to make this the show. He said you should put it on your blog, and I said this is going on the show. This is a bit too much material for a blog post, and I was telling him I was trying to get an image of the paper and all that so that I could show everybody what I was looking at. And he was like, show it to me too. And I emailed it to him, and I said, I'm ambivalent about this because I don't want it to be like, I'm talking bad about her or, trying to look down on her. Because I know her. Again, this is not a stranger. I know her, and she's a victim. So I don't want it to come across that way. But this is on the front page of the paper. It's not like we're rifling through her diary or something like that. 40,000 students, easy or more, have access to go pick up the exact same thing I'm looking at, and anybody in the world can go online and get the exact same thing I'm looking at. So I feel like it was important to point this out and to pick out racist activity, which I think this is. I think this is a conscious act of racism, white supremacy, and I am going to follow through on that and send her an email. I'm going to send her this show and see if she'd be willing to come and share her views. And I don't know. Like I said, she might feel the exact same way. It might be much to do about nothing. She might be in 100% agreement with us and saying, this is really messed up and I feel really mistreated. They didn't tell me anything. They didn't ask me anything about this and just, threw my picture on there looking crazy. I don't know. But I'm curious, and I do at least want to extend her an offer to come and chat and share her thoughts on this photograph. I was scheduled to be on Genital Discourse this evening. That's the Asian Females program at RainyDawg Radio. We spoke for quite a while yesterday. We spoke for hours yesterday. We talked about the paper, her response, going on the program, the whole nine. And I got an email today where she emailed her white co-host, and this was really interesting. You talk about not being honest. This problem is an epidemic amongst victims of racism. She said, "It's my show. I do more of the work than he does. I do the research to get articles and blah, blah, blah. I don't even think of it as our show. It's my show." She goes and talks to her suspected racist co-host, Mr. Ross Parsons, and I had told her the white people at RainyDawg, some of the current staff members, they know Gus T Renegade. They remember when the C.O.W.S was on that station. They were working there when back of the bus, and Gus had the program on their station. You can't go in there and tell them Gus is coming on the show from the C.O.W.S because some of those white people, suspected racists known as Jason Baxter, some of them remember us. So I had my pseudonym all worked out, whole plan. What does she do? The Asian female, non-black, non-white victim of white supremacy. She goes to the white man, gives him a link to the show where I talked about the paper, tells him my name. He listens to the show where I reference him as a suspected white supremacist. I told her all this. She goes and gives it all to him, and what does he do? Of course, "Oh, I don't think this is good." And he rattles off this whole list of reasons why this shouldn't happen, and she backs out. "Oh, well, I think I'll just do it myself." And I said this again highlights exactly why I think it is extraordinarily important to clarify. There is a gigantic, an astronomical gulf between being a black victim of racism and a non-black victim of racism. I would say this person, when I looked at the response, my initial thought was, are you stupid? We went over all of this material in detail. And it's like you totally forgot about all that and just did the most non-constructive thing possible to make this show happen. If you're stupid, this person is not stupid. This person is about to graduate from the University of Washington, pre-med, is studying for the MCATs. This person is not stupid. Far from it. Confused? Yes. A victim? Yes. Still learning? Yes. Stupid? No. I think this is a clear example of non-black people are not really that interested in ruffling white people. This Asian female, she is considered attractive by a lot of males. She gets a lot of privileges. She lives in Mercer Island. If you know where Mercer Island is, if you're familiar with the Pacific Northwest, Mercer Island is the suburbs. Very nice area. Don't have a lot of black people. I believe Mr. Bill Gates has some property in that area. Former head coach of the Seattle Supersonics, Nate McMillan, has a house in that area. He's the only black person that I've ever heard mentioned who has property or is even tolerated being in Mercer Island when the sun goes down. She lives there. At any rate, clear example, and I can even give you one more. There was an Asian female who had agreed to come on this program. She wrote a book. I'm not going to give the title. I'm being respectful, but my respect for non-black victims of racism is rapidly eroding. Not that I'm looking at them as though they're racist, but I'm looking at them as though these are not people who have any sort of interest in replacing white supremacy with justice. These people just want to be as close to white people as possible. And that's what I see. They are much closer to white people than black people, and they're treated much, 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 much better than black people. Mr. Fuller, he clarified. He didn't say non-white males are the most impotent. He said black males are most impotent. Dr. Welsing, she doesn't say all non-white people are equally mistreated. She says the darker you are, the more you are mistreated. I wholeheartedly agree. Yellow Manny, who is not black, whole program said the exact same thing. Frank Wu, Meiju Louis, they are all non-black victims of white supremacy. They have all been on this program and said the exact same thing. But there was an Asian female. She was supposed to be on the program. She's married to a white man. And she found out about the compensatory sex pledge under the system of racism, white supremacy. I do not condone, encourage, or participate in sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people. And, I don't think I could do this. This is crazy. And I said, that's fine, no problem. But I wrote her back and I said, one thing I want to clarify, your conduct is brilliantly illustrating exactly why I think this is totally incorrect and how non-white people are harmed when they engage in sexual intercourse with white people under conditions dominated by racism, white supremacy. And her response was, there's some truth to what you're saying. I have divided loyalties. Direct quote, she said, I have divided loyalties. And that's exactly what I have observed from non-black victims of white supremacy who have much closer ties to white people. Not saying that black people, there are black people who do this as well, but black people are treated much, much worse than non-black people. I'll wrap on that. The Asian female, I'm going to share my thoughts with her, exactly what I just told you all. I'm going to share my thoughts with her. If she's willing, that'll be the show. I don't want to talk about the front page of the paper anymore. I'll share this. She didn't even catch a teaspoon of what I saw in the front page of the paper. She was ignorant about this and had to admit she was ignorant, she missed it, and was upset at herself for missing this information. If it had not been, I'll say this, Gus T Renegade played a significant role in her becoming more aware about how she was victimized. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about her being a non-black victim of white supremacy, her conduct that resulted in Gus T Renegade not being on the show this evening, and other examples that she can share directly of how she is not black and what that means in the system of white supremacy, even though she is a non-white female. That's going to be the program that we have. If it goes down at all, she might say, forget it. I don't want to talk to you, Gus, anymore. Get out of here. I'm going back to do my show with the white man. Fine. No problem. We'll move forward. But, yeah, I don't care about the front page anymore. I said what I had to say on that. If the program goes down, you already know what it's going to be about. There we go. Gus T Renegade, yes, for today's program. If you've been tuning into the program, we did a whole show dedicated to the front page of the University of Washington's paper on February 5th. 2010. I felt there was a blatant, conscious act of racism, white supremacy on the front page of the paper, and felt it needed to be addressed. I definitely wanted to make sure that I was not giving the impression that I had a judgment or a criticism of the non-white female who was pictured and, in my view, horribly mistreated with the front cover of the University of Washington's paper this past Friday. She listened to the program and indicated that she'd be willing to come and share her views on what happened with the paper. Also, the paper was pretty much the story that was dedicated to this non-white female was also about a radio program that she co-hosts here at the University of Washington. She said she would be willing to come hang out with us, share her views, talk about the paper, give us some of the inside tidbits that we missed out on, and just general discussion, racism, white supremacy. Treat to have her on the program. University of Washington. She is majoring in pre-health. Should be graduating in a matter of months, studying hard for the MCATs, and took time out of her busy schedule on President's Day to speak with us here at the C.O.W.S. Our guest, Christine Tran. Ms. Tran, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, loud and clear. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on a day when you have no class. You could have been propping your feet up and having peppermint tea, and you're here to chat about racism, white supremacy. We are quite appreciative.
My pleasure.
Groovy. For the folks who might be listening in, we have a full switchboard already. The folks who are listening in who might not have heard the previous program, could you just give them a little bit of background information about who you are and the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. Well, as Gus said, I am double majoring at the UW in physiology and sexuality and gender studies. Last quarter, the ASUW, that's like student government for the University of Washington, contacted me through, and many other students, through a mass pre-health listserv email asking for a host that would be the medical correspondent for a show that they were hoping would be a bit like Loveline. So there would be professional medical advice, with the disclaimer that I'm not an actual doctor yet. And that would be coupled with a comedian who is Ross Parsons, my co-host. I was quite quickly and easily selected to be the medical correspondent for Genital Discourse, and from there we started the show. We did 2 shows before the Daily came out with their article on genital discourse, which was purposefully timed to be in the sex edition. And I was okay with that because the show is, Genital Discourse is a show about sex, health, and sexual health. It's an open forum for students or anyone who listens to RainyDawg Radio to call in and ask those questions. But the Daily came out with a front page. Let's see, I have it here in front of me. And Gus did the full run-through of this on his show on February 5th, I believe. But there's a huge headline that says, "Let's talk about sex." Sex is in big, bold red letters. A microphone extends from the word sex, pointing directly to my mouth, and I'm making a really awkward, confused face that doesn't line up with my supposed position as the authority on genital discourse. This was coupled with, like I said, the sex edition, which was a lot more sexual in nature than I remember old sex editions being. And a lot of people, including the Daily, argued that they were just doing a show, or they were just doing an article to promote genital discourse and to let people know that there was this resource pertaining to sexual education on campus. But, I mean, if that imagery connected to that headline wasn't enough. On the front page, it also says, on a little side column, it says, "Not getting enough sex from the above story? Look inside. You'll be pretty satisfied. Mature eyes only." And so what Gus talked about and what Ross and I talked about on the last episode of Genital Discourse we had this Friday was that this was a pretty blatant, sexualized image of an Asian female that was taken completely out of context. Like, the Genital Discourse is not a sexual show. It's not, we said this on last week's edition of Genital Discourse. It's not like we were doing a 1-900 call-in number. It's a professional health information show, but it was blatantly sexualized with my face as the face of Genital Discourse, despite the fact that my co-host is Ross Parsons, a white male.
Very interesting. Very interesting. As I said, quite a few folks listened to that program live when I actually did the program here at the C.O.W.S to address my thoughts on the front page of the paper. The program aired on, actually it aired technically February 7th because it was after midnight. But quite a few folks tuned in live, and we've had a few hundred folks have listened to that program in the week that it's been available, and has generated quite a response. So I think a lot of folks, they'll be interested to hear, more information about how that unfolded. I'm kind of not going in a linear fashion here, purposefully. I want to get to the paper. I want to make that the last thing, right? So we're building up to getting to exactly how this went down, the photograph, the interview, and your thoughts about the paper the day you saw it, the first time you saw it, and all that good stuff, which I think is just fascinating. Before we hop into all that, context of white supremacy, always important. I'm gonna switch this up and do it a different way. Are you a black female?
I am an Asian female, so-called Asian.
Okay. We're going to see if we can get the questions answered. I'm doing this purposely, so just humor me for like 30 seconds. So are you a black female?
No.
Okay. So would that mean that you are a white female?
No.
Do you think under any circumstances there's anything you could do, anything you could say to be accepted by a considerable number of individuals who are classified as white? Do you think there's anything you could do or say that they would accept you as a white female?
No. I think I could be accepted as a professional non-white female who has her stuff together, but never as a white female.
To your knowledge, have you ever been accepted as white by a significant number of people who are classified as white?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So not white, not black, non-white female, specifically Asian female. Would that be accurate?
Very accurate.
Okay. I just want to point this out for our listeners. Now, it could be raised because people do tell fibs and people do practice deception, particularly when it comes to racism, white supremacy. So it could be said that our guest could be not telling the truth about her racial classification. I have known this person for closing in on 2 years. I have seen no evidence that this person could be accepted as white by other white people. And in fact, I would submit the newspaper as Exhibit A. I think this is a non-white female and she's being mistreated on that basis. I would submit the newspaper. This program, Context of White Supremacy, I have unfortunately concluded that we are in a global system of racism, white supremacy, and the definition that I use for racism, and white supremacy is as follows. A global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe such a system exists, and do you think that is an accurate definition?
Yes and yes.
Simple. Wow. Such a stark contrast to yesterday's program. Wow. Yes and yes. I want the listeners to know, as I said, it's a very interesting experience for Gus T Renegade to go through this. It's probably one of the first times I've had a guest on the program that I know pretty well. March 1st was also a pretty impactful experience for myself. Although I was never a member of this group, I was never invited to join this organization. I did go to some of the meetings. I believe I saw our guest, Tran, give her presentation on the abuse of non-white female sex workers in Korea. Very interesting experience with March 1st. I wanted to ask you, Christine. In my view, and I could be wrong, feel free, just give us your view. I feel that March 1st, the unraveling of March 1st Solidarity, this organization no longer exists. I feel that Gus T Renegade, a.k.a. Black Jim, played a major part in the unraveling of that organization, and specifically around my views on sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people, because to my knowledge there was only one white person in the group, the suspected white supremacist known as Matthew Hamilton, and he, of course, was in a sexual relationship with one of the Asian females who was a member of this organization. And my views seemed to cause him a lot of problems and ended up, in my view, being one of the significant factors in this group falling apart, if not the principal factor in this group falling apart. Do you feel that that is an accurate assessment of what happened since you were a member of this group? You had a bird's eye view of everything that went down. Do you think that's accurate? And can you share, if you do think that happened, can you share some of the experiences that you saw around how this group fell apart, around sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people, just that idea being discussed?
For sure. Before I get into that, though, just a little note, if anyone wants to do extra credit research or something, while March 1st Solidarity did indeed fall apart, because of exactly what you talked about, it has been reincarnated with most of the original members in another student group on campus called Democracy Insurgent, which I believe now has probably 2 or 3, definitely more than just Matthew Hamilton, the suspected white supremacist member. So it's still alive and running, but wow, I haven't thought about about that situation in a while. I think, can I bring Yellow Manny into this? Because I do feel like he was a principal factor in your views.
I do, and I think people know I have high regard for Yellow Manny, but I would prefer to get your view. If we could save Yellow Manny for a little bit later in the program, I would prefer that. I would prefer to get your take on this, because I would prefer to actually have Yellow Manny on a whole separate program, so we can just have Yellow Manny Day and he can share his views on lots of things.
Okay. So yeah, in a sense, I guess I did get a bird's eye view, because while I was part of the group, I wasn't explicitly involved in many of the pivotal conversations that revolved around the idea of sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people being an incorrect thing to do under the system of white supremacy. And those ideas were introduced to the group by Gus, and Matthew Hamilton did not take that very well at all. It devolved to a point where we had arguments about the definition of white supremacy, and we would be at lunch and having conversations about this, and Matt would start saying, and we would start asking him questions about white supremacy, if the system existed, and then we would ask him, are you white? Do you consider yourself white? And he would say no, and insist that that had been his view all along. And this information came out in May, whereas we'd been organizing together since probably October or November. And from there on out, with his declaration that he was actually not white, even though he is white and he can operate as white and have white privilege under the system of white supremacy, he kept insisting that. And on the flip side, his partner, the non-white Asian female, who is also instrumental in the founding and the running of March for Solidarity, she also began to heavily disagree and have conflict with people who kept interrogating Matt about why all of a sudden he was not white now that this conversation was coming up. So her defensiveness of Matt and his racial identity and of their sexual relationship, coupled with Matt's deception, I would say, was a key factor in the dissolution of March for Solidarity, in addition to, the fact that the UW said that our campaign was, fundamentally disrupting the way that they, or would fundamentally challenge the way that they invested, since their investments aren't based on social responsibility or a sense of justice. They're based on how much money the university can get back.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Again, our guest today's program, Christine Tran, Context of White Supremacy. I just want to clarify before we let loose of the whole March 1st experience. You already shared that you grew up around white people, well-off white people, and had been conditioned to be fearful and suspicious of black people, and that you just, recently have begun to challenge some of that conditioning and to be conscious of it and to try to work against that. Can we get an honest assessment when you first heard Gus T Renegade, a.k.a. Black Jim, black male, no resources, pauper, poor dude, Black Jim, mouthing off about sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people? Hearing this, can you give an honest opinion of what your thoughts were about Black Jim's viewpoint on this at the time that you first heard it? I guess this would be like spring of 2007.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit difficult to remember exactly what I was thinking back then, but trying to be as honest as possible. To put this all in the context, besides the context of white supremacy, that was a pivotal time in my education about this. So there was a lot of restructuring of thoughts and beliefs going on in my head. and so much of what I had been taught for so long was being disrupted that I was pretty open to new ideas, but I think I was introduced to Black Jim, aka Gus's, ideas about the system of white supremacy in general before I heard how vehemently you disagreed with sex between white people and non-white people. And when I heard about your views on white supremacy as a system, I thought they were very logical. I was very impressed with the way that you were able to explain that to people in a way that if they were honest about answering your questions and honest about their own feelings and their own perceptions of things, if they were honest, then your view of white supremacy was, I would say, irrefutable. But then from there I heard about your views on sex between white and non-white people. And when I first heard that, I remember thinking it was a bit radical. I was like, what basis is there for this? I hadn't really thought about sexual intercourse, even though I had thought about the system of white supremacy. But I think at that point I saw you around more often, and I was able to hear you have more conversations about that. And from there on out, that was when I saw the truth and the usefulness in that statement.
Very interesting. I guess I'll highlight that for the listeners that Gus T Renegade has been mouthing off about the incorrect nature of sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people for some time. And obviously my thoughts have not changed on that. That's the frame of reference that I had when I looked at the University of Washington's paper for Friday, February 5th. Might account for the difference in what I saw when I looked at the photograph and what other people saw when they looked at the photograph. That could be. I guess, and I hope all of this is in context. I hope this will make sense why I'm not going in order with our guest, Christine Tran, kind of setting the table, so to speak, for this photograph to give some background information. And I thought it was an excellent point Lauren Ashley raised, given that, what Christine Tran has shared with us and her experience. How did she miss this photograph? So hopefully this will lay some groundwork for that. Genital Discourse, your program that you co-host with the suspected white supremacist known as Ross Parsons. Gus T Renegade and Yellow Manny were supposed to participate in that program on Friday, February 12th. I know you and I, Christine, we had spoken about that program. We went over details, and it didn't happen. Can you share with our listeners what happened that caused Yellow Manny and Gus T Renegade, our invitations to Genital Discourse, to be rescinded?
Yes. I had actually kind of gone ahead and talked with you about the Daily's front page and about having you on the show to talk about the front page, because I think you would have done a great job of facilitating the conversation about sexualization of non-white people in a system of white supremacy. So I went ahead and extended that invitation to you and contacted Ross Parsons about that afterwards, thinking that it would have been okay, since I do a lot of the research for the show and find a lot of the articles that we'll talk about, and he's usually okay with all of that. And when I emailed him about having you on the show, I'm looking back at our emails here right now, and I'm trying to paraphrase since I don't have permission to directly quote these on air. But I said, quote, "I'm even thinking about having Gus on the show," and I sent him a link to your February 7th radio show regarding the daily front page. I said, "I'm even thinking about having Gus on the show as a guest since he speaks about racism and white supremacy very clearly, capital letters, in a way that I've never encountered before, which would be helpful since a lot of people will probably ask, but why is all of this daily stuff relevant to genital discourse?" So I sent that to him as part of one of our co-host planning emails for the week, and his response was basically that he didn't want Gus on air because he didn't want to come out swinging at the daily and seeming like we were attacking the daily. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but sorry, I'm just reading the emails. Basically, Gus, you talk about white supremacy and racism too clearly in a way that he thought might scare off listeners of genital discourse, and that would very much offend the daily because they would feel like they were being attacked.
For our listeners, Ross Parsons, is he a white person?
Yes. In the email, after listening to your radio show about the daily front page, he actually said I don't know if he realized what his words were saying, but he said also, "I am a suspected white supremacist," even though in conversations that took place after that email, he really questioned your perspective on white people and their role in the context of white supremacy. He didn't like the blanket generalization, so to speak, of all white people being potential racists and suspected white supremacists.
Did he say that was incorrect, or did he just say that he didn't like it? To suspect that, see, now that's key distinction. Would have loved the opportunity to have Mr. Parsons on the program. And this, I guess, going back to our conversation, when you and I spoke, I believe that was last Thursday, February 11th. When you and I spoke, do you recall me sharing that I suspected that, number one, I suspect Ross Parsons, exactly as I stated on the previous program, I suspect he is most likely a racist white supremacist. That's number one. Number two, this program, The Context of White Supremacy, used to air on RainyDawg Radio. I had shared that with you, I think, multiple times, and my concerns with RainyDawg Radio, the current general manager, suspected racist white supremacist Jason Baxter. He was affiliated with RainyDawg Radio when the C.O.W.S was broadcast from the U.W.S radio station. He's still there now. I suspected that they would be strongly opposed to having Gus T Renegade make a return to RainyDawg Radio, and to help counter their opposition and any obstacles to having me on the program, I had suggested using a pseudonym. I believe I gave you a different name that I wanted to be referenced as other than Gus. To your knowledge, do you recall all of this being accurate when I just stated?
Yes.
Okay.
I just made the mistake of having Ross listen to your program and realize how clear your views were. He stated repeatedly that he was uncomfortable with you calling Jason Baxter a white supremacist. And
wait a minute, wrong. Did I call him a white supremacist, or did I call him a suspected white supremacist?
Sorry.
Okay.
My mistake. I believe you, if you said that because I didn't listen to that part of the February 7th radio show. I kind of clicked through it and listened to about an hour of it. So I don't know verbatim what you said about your experience with RainyDawg. So on the program, you said, you probably said, you can confirm this, that Jason Baxter was a suspected white supremacist. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. But in my conversations with Ross Parsons, he really didn't want trouble from the station because his perception was that you had called Jason Baxter a white supremacist.
Okay. Did you listen to the broadcast where I discussed the paper with your photo on the front page? Did you hear me reference Ross Parsons in the bits that you heard of the program?
I do not recall that.
Okay. Given what you stated at the beginning of the broadcast, in saying you have been conditioned to be fearful and suspicious of black people, that would be number one. And equally important, when Justice asked how you function around white people who practice racism, you said that you make an effort to be on your best behavior and that you don't want to upset white people. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the gist of what you said. Okay. Given that, I am very suspicious. This seems like, and I could be incorrect, but I suspect it could have been you did not want to upset these white people. I strongly recall you saying when we spoke that you didn't even view this as a shared broadcast. You felt this was your program because you put in a lot more work in getting the articles and things you all were going to talk about, and that the suspected racist known as Ross Parsons, he just kind of shows up. He's a comedian, one. He just kind of shows up and does, I guess, whatever his role is in the program. I suspect that you did not want to upset the white people at RainyDawg Radio. You did not want to upset your co-host, bringing Gus T Renegade, a black male who speaks clearly, perhaps too clearly, although that's pretty strange to have someone not be good because they speak too clearly about a subject matter, to bring Gus T Renegade and Yellow Manny into the studio and upset these white people, which might have repercussions for you, your role at RainyDawg Radio, even being able to use this on as a reference, or not as a reference, but as an activity down the road, applying for different schools or whatever have you. I suspect that strongly could have motivated you to share the link to this program with Ross Parsons, to not follow through on using the pseudonym that I told you I wanted to use for the program. I was not going to use Gus T Renegade, going to RainyDawg Radio. What I just laid out, does that sound logical? Does that sound sensible? Does that sound like that's what could have happened?
Yeah, I think it is. Oh, but just to clarify, I had talked to Ross about having you on the program, and referred to you as Gus before we talked about your new pseudonym.
Okay.
But
that information... Go ahead.
Pardon? Oh.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to continue to say that I do think I just didn't want to upset them. For a couple of reasons. I'm not being paid for doing RainyDawg Radio, but I essentially sent in my resignation yesterday, saying that I would not be continuing on for another quarter, even though they had wanted me for the rest of the school year. But now that I committed to this, even though the daily article came out and I've reevaluated whether or not non-white people can even talk about sex very explicitly and openly without being sexualized, despite all that, I was committed to finishing out the quarter and finishing out the program that I had started. So I didn't want to work in a context where if I had been the instrumental person in bringing you into the studio and I upset everyone else at the station, I didn't really want to have to deal with the repercussions of that. And then also, I was a bit worried about what repercussions that would have for me personally, since, granted, RainyDawg Radio is just the radio station at UW. It doesn't exactly have a academic affiliation, but given my experiences with March for Solidarity, given the abuses of non-white people that I've seen at the hands of University of Washington sub-institutions, I was a bit wary of putting myself in that position.
Okay. And like I said, I wholeheartedly appreciate the honesty, as much honesty as we can bear. I have a great respect for that. I guess my response would be, as a black male, everybody listening, I look at that photograph of Christine Tran on the front page. Not black, as she has stated. Not black. Asian female, grew up, as she said, around well-to-do white people. Gus T Renegade, a black male. I did not grow up around well-to-do white people. I do not own a phone. I do not own a computer. Christine Tran has a MacBook. I don't have a MacBook. I just think it's very important that all non-white people make an effort to be honest with one another. And I especially think be honest with black people. If nothing else, just be as honest as possible. For me, I think it would have been best if, when we spoke, it would have been best and it would have been most accurate if you had raised your concerns then about, hey, I don't want to ruffle these white people that I'm working with, even though I don't know if I want to stick this out, even though I'm thinking I might be resigning and just finishing out the quarter and calling it a career at RainyDawg with general discourse. I still might not want to upset these white people bringing you in. I am vested, and I've seen how non-white people can be mistreated when they make an effort to counter racism, white supremacy. So, and in fact, I've already discussed bringing you on the show, and I've referenced you as Gus. I'm not going to use a pseudonym. I'm thinking about sending him your program. It would have been best if you had shared all of that information with me, as opposed to saying, this is my program. And I remember even asking questions then. I don't know if you recall, but I remember when you said that. This is my program. I do more of the work. I get the articles. I feel like Ross Parsons, suspected racist, he doesn't even contribute equally in the effort for this program. And I remember the first thought that clicked in my head, Ross Parsons is white. I do not think he is a junior partner in this endeavor. I know he's a comedian. I'm real certain that he probably doesn't do any of the research for articles and all that stuff. I'm quite certain that you are working hard to do a professional broadcast and to share constructive information with your listeners, just because of the respect that I have for you as a scholar. But, and this is exactly what we shared on the program with Neely Fuller Jr. last week, in the system of white supremacy plays out on a personal level every day with the white person that you're sitting next to, the white person you're on your job with, the white person you're at the radio studio with. Ross Parsons being a white person, that means a lot in the context of white supremacy. And I think it would have just been better if we could have acknowledged that truthfully on Thursday, as opposed to speaking as though, this is going to happen, we'll do the pseudonym, and not really clearly, accurately stating, hey, I've got some self-interest here that I want to protect. I think that would have been best. And I think, as a general rule, if non-white people, especially non-black, non-white people could do that, that would be extremely helpful. Even if it hurts, even if it's, hey, I'm not messing with you black people. I have self-interest. I'm doing well. I have career aspirations that I'm trying to protect. I cannot be in this replace white supremacy with justice thing with you all. I know you're mistreated, and I know that's messed up, but I got dreams. I got things I'm trying to accomplish. That would be best. That would be most helpful, because at least everybody would be on the same page with what to expect and what's happening. Could I have your feedback on that, please?
Yeah. Well, to be honest again, when we talked on Thursday, I was honest to my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, I was telling the truth when I said that I do put most of the effort into the show, and in that sense I have control of the show. But, when I said that and it ran through your mind that despite doing most of the concrete work for the show, I don't have full control of the show by virtue of Ross Parsons being a white person. That part of it was and is and always will be true as long as we're operating in the context of white supremacy. But at that point, I had never encountered any opposition from Ross, so that didn't even cross my mind. I was planning to tell the station, like if I had been able to get you onto the show, I would have told the managers at the station that I was having Greg Mills onto the show, not Gus. But I made the mistake of introducing you as Gus to Ross, and having him listen to your broadcast and your take on the daily article. And when he was opposed to having you on the show, that was when I realized all of the self-interest that, all the things that I had to protect for myself in self-interest. And that was when I realized that how big of a part Ross could play, or that Ross does play in the show. Because had he been supportive of me in bringing you into the studio, all of these would be moot points. I really feel that even if we had you in the studio and Jason Baxter and other members of the RainyDawg staff were strongly opposed to having you in the studio, if Ross had stood by me on that, even after you came into the studio, talked to him about white supremacy, and analyzed the Daily Front Page in the context of white supremacy on air, I think that if Ross had given me full support on that, then it would be smooth cruising from there. But that just didn't cross my mind, that he would be opposed to it. And that decision of his changes the game, because in that case, it would have just been me against my co-host, as well as the RainyDawg staff, all of whom are white, with the exception of, I believe, one staff member.
Very interesting. I want to see if Justice has questions, but a quickie before I go to Justice. Would it be accurate to say that you did not suspect Ross Parsons could be a racist white supremacist prior to this minor conflict?
Knowing what I know now and going through what I've gone through now, I should have expected it, but in practice I didn't. Even before that went down, it theoretically made sense in my head why white people under the system of white supremacy should be considered to be suspected white supremacists who practice racism. But when it came down to put it into practice, that broke down. And that did not cross my mind.
I see this happen all the time amongst tons of non-white people who say that they are informed about racism, white supremacy. It breaks down on a personal level. The day-to-day white people that they come in contact with, they totally lose track of the context of white supremacy and what that means on an individual level with even Ross Parsons of the world, who's a comedian. I mean, we're not talking about, to my knowledge, a Rhodes Scholar, somebody who is looking to get a PhD. He's a stand-up comic. I've seen video. I think I've even seen this person live. I could be wrong, but I think I've seen him live. And I think he even made a comment that was suspiciously racist when I saw him, but that's neither here nor there. I hope it has been clear why I wanted to start, not directly at the photograph, but starting at a different point so we could walk up to the photograph, and maybe now we'll have more clarity around what Christine thought about the photograph when she first saw the front page of the Daily last Friday. We have a lot of people that called in, so I'm going to see if we can, we should be able to knock this out pretty quickly. If you could tell us, I guess, what happened when the folks from the Daily, when they came to conduct this interview with you and your co-host, Ross Parsons. How many photographs were taken? Was Ross included in photographs? If you could set that up and then tell us your first reaction when you actually saw the paper last Friday.
Okay. Photos and reaction. Well, first of all, I want to start out by saying that in the beginning of the show, when you made the disclaimer that you were going to go about this in a nonlinear fashion, now that we've pretty much been through your progression of questions and exploring my past, it's actually been quite, you did it quite perfectly. Very, very linear. Everything that you talked about, March for Solidarity, and especially Kenya, were, I think, big contributors to my reaction when I first saw the paper and my reaction after I realized what the paper was representing. But to get to the meat of your question, the interviews were actually done separately, and I think that was just based on scheduling constraints. My interview took like 10 minutes. Ross's was the same, by Molly Rosbach, the reporter, and the photographer was different. Reporter was a white female, photographer was a white male, and we met in the studio on a day when we actually weren't doing the radio show, and Ross and I just sat in our usual positions with the mics and started just having a normal conversation off the air, looking as if we were doing the show, and the photographer just snapped pictures of us while we talked. And after hearing the shutter click that many times, I would say that probably anywhere from 50 to 100 or upwards of 100 photos were taken of both me and Ross individually talking into the microphone, in a conversation where we talked seriously and we laughed a lot. So many different facial expressions were probably expressed over the course of that 5-10 minute conversation. And then Ross and I were asked to sit next to each other in front of the soundboard in the studio and just smile for the camera. Probably about 5 or 10 of those were taken, and just like that, the shoot was over. And it took about, let's see, we did the shoot on a Thursday, and the article came out not that Friday, but the next Friday. So they had they had 1 week to put all of that together. And when that front page came out, I actually wasn't on campus that day, but I saw it online, and the first thing I saw was the picture. And my first reaction was, first of all, I'm making a really weird, awkward face, and second of all, Ross and I were both at the studio. Why is Ross not in the picture? And I actually looked through, and then that was when I picked up the hard copy, and I looked through kind of expecting that maybe there would be like a small black and white picture at least of Ross being represented as a co-host of General Discourse somewhere, but that was not the case. And I think it was important for us to cover my experience in Kenya because, very ironically, even though it was a study abroad trip centered around learning about human rights, and for me, I was very curious about how it would contribute to my understanding of white supremacy as a global system, I came back and I was so stressed out from what I experienced, from just living in that kind of an environment, that when I came back, I didn't think very critically about racism or white supremacy for quite a couple of months, which is highly ironic. And when I saw that picture, honestly, my initial reaction was just those two things and nothing more, which I think is very telling given that I'm a sexuality and gender studies major.
Very interesting. So how did you evolve? How did your thinking about this image evolve to where you thought, wait a minute, I think this is that old racism cropping up again?
Yellow Manny called me up and asked me what I thought about the photo, about the front page, and I didn't have much to say about it except for those things. I mean, and then I went on a spiel about how I kind of like got defensive without even being provoked to be defensive about how I thought General Discourse was an important show to do, and blah, 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 sex education is important, and there's no such other resource like this on campus. But then Yellow Manny kind of walked me through all of the, or some of the clues on the page that would strongly suggest that especially since this was produced in the context of white supremacy, that all of this was a very blatant exploitation of my image and sexualization of a non-white female. And when he talked to me about, even when he was laying it out for me, I was a little hesitant to believe it, I think because it was so personal. it's like a humongous picture, and this was far more coverage than I had ever gotten doing work in March 1st or in other things that I'd been involved in that had been featured in the Daily. And, when he told me about the picture, I was like, well, like it's not like that deliberate, and he was like, how many shots did they take? How did you realize that the online picture for the online edition of the Daily is that exact same picture but not cropped so that you can see my body, my entire torso, that I'm sitting in a chair, that I'm at the radio station and I'm doing a show, versus just a very zoomed in picture of just the microphone and me. And having had it laid out so clearly, that was when I started seeing the front page for what it was and for seeing all of the other little things that contributed to that interpretation.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Wowzers. We have a full switchboard. I'm going to concede to the switchboard. If Yellow Manny is present, he can come in now. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 people, I believe, on the line. Back of the Bus is with us. Back of the Bus, if you have a question, you have control of your own mic, so feel free. If you have a question, go right ahead. Back of the Bus or Lauren Ashley, if you have a question, go right ahead. If not, I'll just scroll down the switchboard.
Okay. Lauren Ashley, do you want to go? I'll go right ahead. Christine.
Howdy.
Christine, can you hear?
Yep.
Greetings. Have you heard of the term snitch?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to provide a definition and ask you if you believe that's an accurate definition of the term snitch. Snitch. To provide information directly or indirectly that would promote the mistreatment of any victim of racism and or impede efforts of any victim of racism attempting to replace white supremacy with justice. And there's a number 2 definition, and that is to assist the white supremacist by providing information in exchange for resources or position.
Can you repeat the first one again?
Yes, to provide information directly or indirectly that will promote the mistreatment of any victim of racism and or impede the efforts of any victim of racism attempting to replace white supremacy with justice. Do you believe those are accurate definitions?
Yeah, I would say. I've just never thought of the connotation that I've heard snitch, in which I've heard snitch being used is when, is generally when, like quote unquote tattletaling. But your definition has a much wider implication, but I think I'd be willing to accept it. I've just never thought of it that way before.
By that definition, did you snitch on
You're
Gus
getting
T
a little
Renegade?
fuzzy.
Can you hear me?
Kind of. Like half of what you're saying. You're a little fuzzy.
By that definition, did you snitch on Gus T Renegade, which prevented him from appearing at the RainyDawg radio broadcast of Genital Discourse? Could I be heard?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're still fuzzy, but I heard your question. I guess that could be said using that definition. In the sense that by not disagreeing with my co-host and just bringing Gus into the studio anyways, I impeded his ability to express his views on the front page of the Daily in the context of white supremacy.
Yeah, that's a suggestion I throw out there for victims of racism. Don't snitch on another victim of racism, especially if it can be prevented. I'm certain that white people manipulate us and use us to do things for them, but if we're aware, try not to snitch on another victim of racism. Just a suggestion.
I understand, and I believe I spoke with Yellow Manny, and I told him that if I were not black, still non-white, but just not black, I most likely would not be working against racism and white supremacy. If I lived out in Bellevue, around white people who had a lot of resources and, well on my way to having a successful career, I don't think I would be hanging out with Gus T Renegade and working to replace white supremacy with justice. I think it's very important if we're going to do that, make sure you at least snitch to the black people and let them know, hey, I've got a lot of self-interest to protect here. Can't really be going gung-ho about this. Yeah, I know white supremacy is bad. Yeah, hey, you're black. Yes, I know. I've been to Kenya. Oof, I feel for you, but that's cool. Just let us know so we can all be on the same page. That would be extraordinarily helpful for non-white people. Honest as we can be.